Hello everyone, here's a video on the basics of assessment making on PLATO. If you go to lessons and quizzes and exams, in here you can hit new quiz and you can give it a name, and then you have lots of possibilities up here to restrict the exam, when you release it, all those types of things, what kind of feedback the students get, does it get sent to your grade book. So there's some things to play around with up there, and I can make another video on that. But the actual creation of the test, I always like to start by turning the description on and just saying no external help is permitted on this assessment. And then you can boldface that. You can, turn it to a red color so it sticks out. And you could maybe even up the font size a little bit so it really pops. So that will look like that when they start the test, and you can give them any other information you want about the test. But add or edit questions and say add, and you can pick a new question. And there's many different types. I don't know everything about all of these. I've used a bunch of them, but again, you could certainly play around with that. We'll start with just some of the basics like true, false. In the quiz editor, as soon as you click on the dialog box to turn on the actual question text, you have the ability to make that larger and do all types of things up here. Add pictures, add videos, add tables, which I like to use a lot. Change the font, all types of things. And one of the nice ones is the equation editor. So I could do something like this, where I say, let me see the parentheses and x minus 2 parentheses x plus 3, and then I say that's equal to, and then I'll pick x squared, and let's say we get a let's say someone does it incorrectly and does a minus 5x minus 1 or something pretty ridiculous. You can insert that and then go back to the short dialog box there and count that as false and change the number of points. Okay, save, and don't worry what that looks like there. You can always preview it and see. Add another question. I'm going to add another true false just so I have some logical sections here. It can be literally anything you want here, right? Let's say that the Pythagorean theorem is applicable to right triangles. True or false, right? Again, don't worry about the quality of my question, clearly. And then one more true false. And maybe we go back here to this and say something like sine, and let's do pi over 2, get a symbol just to show you some different features, is equal to 1. Insert. Okay, so I have those, and then I'll want to maybe add a multiple choice or two. Which of the following is the solution to and I could certainly do this one from the actual keypad, but to keep the font similar, I'm going to do this. Again, Over here to the right is where the real question format comes in. So don't worry about that being elevated. You can see the preview over here. And then we can do 6. We can do 2. We can do -2 maybe. And say you didn't want any more questions, solutions, any more possibilities, you can X that off. You can also add additional ones. So you can add, additional values in here. And maybe somebody would get divide by 4, maybe a 1. Okay, I picked the correct answer. Now I can randomize the answers for each student, which I like to do. Unless you have none of the above or something like that, then you don't want to do that. Let me get another multiple choice. And here we might be able to ask, I don't know, let's just do one of these. Sine x over cosine x. And say that is, excuse me. And then we'll say tangent x cosecant x secant x and cotangent x. So all this is very easy to do. As you can see, it doesn't take much time. I can see exactly what's happening over here. And I picked the right answer. Again, there's, I think, some value in randomizing this one and hitting save. I'll just show you one more type of question, and that would be a free response, written response. And in this one, I'm going to make that a little bigger, and I'm going to say verify the following identity. Show all work. And here we could do something like let's do I don't know. I'm going to do 1 minus sine squared x. And darn it, I want that to be in a fraction, so I'll highlight that, put it in a fraction, a lot like math type. And that's cosine x in the denominator. And I want that to equal cosine x. Okay. Insert that. You always want to check enable HTML editor, or they won't be able to use that graphical template for the math notation. So you have to do that, or they're only allowed to use the keyboard. The notation looks nice, I think, up here. And then I can say make that worth 4 points. All right, so there's my basic quiz, and I'm talking and everything, but it still took me like maybe 5 minutes. I'll go back to the settings for this, and I have over here on the left, natural paginations. So I'm going to say I want to make those first 3 together since they're true and false, and those next 2 together since they're multiple choice. Okay, and that all looks good. I have my directions there, so that's good. I'll hit save. Restrictions is where I say, okay, I want this to start. I'll start this tomorrow, maybe right after midnight for the students who stay up, kind of late. I'll allow it to run 1 full calendar day. So tomorrow night at 11:59, I'm going to close this thing. And they have access to this, and I can put on a time restriction. So I'll enforce a time limit of maybe 20 minutes, 5-minute grace period, and I'll prevent them from taking further changes. Okay, they can't do anything else when the time and the grace is up. Down here, special access, where you'd have the students with disabilities or whatever, you could give extra time, a different date to take the test, etc. So you can do all that kind of thing. We can set up the lockdown browser. We can only allow them to take the quiz after they have met certain requirements in the class, like watching a video or taking a practice quiz. So there's lots of flexibility on your end as far as what you want them to do or not. The assessment itself, when do you want it graded? Now remember, you're going to have to grade the free response ones, but it could be graded immediately, everything but free response, sent to the grade book immediately. You have to create that category that you want it to go in. So again, these are all things I could show you. And then submission views is where you can tell it what you want the users to be able to see when they're done. So do you want them to see anything or none at all? So I usually say yes, showing correct answers. And then this thing's ready to go. I can hit save. And if I go to lessons and quizzes and exams, it sits there as a future exam for the students. Now that crossed out means I did not give them access. It's still hidden to users if you want to work on it, etc. So you got to go back in and tell it now that you have the time restriction on it to go ahead and allow users to see it. They won't see it until that availability is met, but they can see that it's out there, which is a good thing. You can post it on your calendar, etc. And then you can preview it and see it just like a student would. You can even take it as a student would. Okay, so they know how much time is allowed, they see the instructions, the whole thing. And here's what the product would look like to them. Page 1, they'd see this. I think that was a false, true, and a true. And then they can hit next page. Here come all the multiple choices, right? Which of the following is the solution to? And we're going to get a 6 there. And then which one of these is correct? Tangent X, next page. The whole time time is clicking down for them up here. You can actually omit this if you don't want them to see that, but I think it's logical for them to see that. And then here, as long as you enable the HTML editor, they can choose to do trigonometric work here. Okay, they can actually verify. So it'd be up to you at what level you wanted them to interact with this, but you could certainly have them show cosine squared x, and then cosine x again probably, and then a return, and then show that that equals cosine of x, and insert. Okay. And at that point, they are done with the test. They submit the quiz. And depending on what your regulations were, that's when it either gets graded right away or you have to grade it to get it to the grade book. But that's pretty much the basics of this. And again, there are lots of options for different types of questions. At any point, you can go back in and say, I want to put more questions in there. So here you are, and you just say add or edit questions. Okay, you can change their point values, but maybe you think after the fact that you know, if you didn't have randomization on, you say, boy, I'd like 5 to be in front of 4. Just move that up there. So lots of different things that you can do to make this work. And I would be the first to admit I don't know everything about this, but I've been using it for a while and it works pretty well. I think that's it. Now the question about where does a student see this again is asked to me once in a while. That is under lessons and quizzes and exams. Okay. All right. Hope that helps. If you have any other questions, I can certainly make more videos. Thanks.